time, I'm sure, for a Feldman vacation. So go up to Nantucket, find the man who can suck it. You better do it now before you kick the bucket. You better do it now before you kick the bucket. You better do it now before you kick the bucket.
Go to Nantucket and find a man who can suck it. I love you, Professor Mike Steinel. I know I need a vacation. I do. Welcome to the mop-up for August 12th, 2021. I'm David Feldman, coming to you from an air shaft overlooking a parking garage where the temperature is about 85 degrees, partly sunny and muggy. Speaking of muggy, despite what you've been told, it is not muggy here in New York City when it comes to crime. You're hearing a lot about crime going up in New York City. That's a lie. If I've learned anything, and I haven't learned a lot, I know that you can shape any statistic you want. You can mold it to prove whatever you're trying to get across. That's what the field of economics is. That's all economics is. Grab a spreadsheet, ask who's paying you for your study, and then use that spreadsheet to make it look like the people who are paying you are correct and the other side is wrong. That's economics, that's statistics. I warned last summer on this show that once we start looking into the police and uncovering that they are racketeers, that they are criminal in their behavior, I warned that once we start talking about defunding the police, which only means spending more on social services and less on shooting unarmed black men. We have a messaging problem in this country. Defunding the police is probably not the best slogan. What the people behind defund the police mean is less money on weapons for cops, more money on weapons for social workers. That's common sense, right? The right wing doesn't want that. The authoritarians do not want that. They want a police state. They want a police state, at least on the street. They want a police state. They don't want anybody policing corporate America, but on the street, they want their property protected. That's what the right-wing authoritarians have wanted for more than 150 years, since fascism reared its ugly little head. So news reports started coming out right around the BLM protests, and I warned that this was going to happen. They were going to make the statistics sing that crime is going up. We need the police. And it's working. Eric Adams is going to be the new mayor of New York City. He won the big Democratic primary. He's a former police officer, and he got elected on law and order. People are terrified of crime in the streets. Why? Because the media only covers murder. That's all the media is interested in. If there's a murder, front page. They lead with blood, right? You turn on the news, and as I've said before, if you only get your news from television, you're ignorant. I don't mean to be cruel. I know a lot of people are dyslexic and they can't read, but if you get your news from television, you're ignorant, and you're led to believe that crime is going up. Now, what's the truth? The truth in New York City is the truth for any urban area in America. The truth is that murder is up slightly. Murder is up slightly, but it's coming up from record lows. Murder, if you look at the long sweep of history, murder has been declining for the past 40 years. Now, murder is bad. I've been murdered a couple of times, and I don't want that ever to happen to me again. Murder is bad, but it's a rarity, okay? That's why it's always on the front page. It's why it's the lead story. And So murder grabs the hairlines. Uh, we won't talk about hairlines today. Murder grabs the headlines and the hairlines. Go to fair.org. They're a great news gathering operation. They do fairness and accuracy in journalism. Fair.org. They crunched some numbers this past week. And here's the truth about the New York City crime rate, according to FAIR. Robberies are at their lowest point in decades. So your chances of walking out into the street and getting mugged are infinitesimal. Misdemeanor assaults are up sharply. Are sharply down. Let me say that again. I'm looking at the chart. Misdemeanor assaults are sharply down by 22% from 2019. So you're less likely to be assaulted than you were before. Felony assaults are up, but only by 2%. And that's probably because the cops have been kicking everybody's ass. I've shown you the clips of, you're not allowed to see them on YouTube. They'll take them down. There are at least 1,000 clips circulating of felonious assaults committed by the police. Go to the New York Times. They've collected a string of videos of cops just dunking on protesters. So felony assaults are up 2% over the year before the protests. But I would assume that's the cops committing the felony assaults. The cops are pissed off. And so what they're going to do is beat the crap out of a protester and then arrest the protester they just beat up for felony assault. If you don't believe that, you're not reading. FAIR goes on to write, quote, New York City is nowhere near its, quote unquote, bad old days of crime. You wouldn't know that if you watch the local news or read the Daily News or the New York Post. In 1993, that's the earliest year for which the New York Police Department provides year-to-date crime numbers, okay? Back in 1993, there were 718 murders at this point in the year. So what are we, like halfway through the year? So that is close to 4 times higher than today. Okay, 4 times higher than it was, than it is now. In fact, the current number of murders for this half of the year is just a hair higher than it was in 2012. In 2012, halfway into 2012, here in New York City, they had 191 murders. Bad, right? But Mayor Michael Bloomberg celebrated 191. He said it's only 191 murders, which proves, and I quote the mayor, New York City is the safest big city in America. So we're doing about the same rate of murder as we did in 2012. And that was a record year that Michael Bloomberg touted as proof that he's made New York City the safest big city in America. Of course, you wouldn't know that if you get your news from the local television station. That makes you ignorant. You are ignorant if you get your news from TV. FAIR goes on to write, quote, the overall crime numbers, combining the 7 major crimes that the New York City Police Department tracks, they are lower so far this year than in any previous year. And they are less than a third their year-to-date total back in 1996. That's as far back as they can measure. So you're safe. You're safe in a city where everybody's going crazy from COVID. You would think we've been in quarantine, we're angry, we're scared. You would think violent crime would be up. It's not, but people want us to believe that we need more police and fewer social workers. All that being said, Dan Frankenberger in the newsroom is not with us today. Uh, I'll show the pictures later on. I think John Hayes will be filling in for him today for Community Billboard. There are some nasty pictures of Dan Frankenberger. He looks like he got pulled over by the cops on a dusty dirt road. And instead of giving him a ticket, they decided to use his face for batting practice. He's all swollen, and he got stung by a bee. And his face, I'll show the pictures. It's scary because I love Dan. I don't like to see him swollen that way, but his face swelled up like Lindsey Graham's pants when Mario Lopez's commercial for Echelon Fitness comes on the TV. I mean, that's really swollen. So feel better, Dan. And another cautionary tale reminding you, don't go outside. Do not go outside. Bad things will happen to you. The cops will beat you up. You won't get mugged. You won't get murdered. You won't get assaulted unless it's from a New York City cop or bees. You'll be attacked by bees. The saga of Julian Assange continues. The Biden administration's Justice Department is still attempting to extradite Julian Assange and bring him here to America up on espionage charges for leaking documents that exposed numerous war crimes committed by our troops, by American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yes, the Espionage Act from 1917, the Espionage Act from 1917 is being invoked to prosecute Julian Assange because he's considered a foreign spy. As if anybody needed a foreign spy to expose the countless war crimes our soldiers were committing in Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't need Julian Assange to tell the world or America about the war crimes that our soldiers committed in the illegal Iraq war or in Afghanistan. Ask the people from Abu Ghraib about the American war crimes. Julian Assange didn't tell us anything we didn't know already. And as far as I know, and I don't know that much, it's hard to keep track of everything, but as far as I know, the only person being prosecuted for those crimes, for any crime, is Julian Assange for exposing those war crimes. So war crimes were committed. I don't think they've prosecuted anybody who committed those war crimes. We don't do that. We don't. We're not signatures to the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So we don't commit war crimes. So the only person being prosecuted because of those war crimes is Julian Assange for exposing them. That's how I understand it. Assange had been holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy and then was released into British custody in 2019, kicking and screaming. In January, a British judge, Vanessa Barrister, that's an interesting name for a barrister, or maybe she makes coffee. Barrister? Vanessa Barrister, British judge. She said back in January that she would like to turn Julian Assange over to the American Justice Department, but she said Assange is suffering from exhaustion and depression. And she feared that if he were transferred to an American prison, he'd end up committing suicide, which our prisoners seem to do. So that's like settled law internationally, that our prisons are a human rights disaster. And you cannot allow a suspect to be placed in an American prison. It's just not safe. But Julian Assange is the criminal. So our Justice Department is appealing this decision. The Biden Justice Department, Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, is sending some lawyers to London to argue a full appeal for custody of Julian Assange before the British High Court on October 27th and 28th. All hands on deck, Justice Department. We have to get Julian Assange because it's not like our Justice Department has anything better to do. This is not the busy season. You know, we have a new president. Things have slowed down. I think it's thundering outside. It's not the busy season. What else does the Justice Department have to do? Oh, right. Prosecute the people who actually tried to overthrow the government. I forgot about that. Right, I forgot about that. The Justice Department is spending all this time and money trying to snatch Julian Assange and then put him on trial when the Capitol riot prosecution going on right now is severely undermanned. They don't have enough attorneys to prosecute the more than 560 subhumans who stormed our nation's Capitol. They've so far charged 560 of these subhumans. There are more charges to come. And this right now is the largest investigation ever conducted by our Justice Department. The Justice Department was founded back in 1870. This is the largest investigation and prosecution ever in the history of the Justice Department. They're understaffed, but somehow getting Julian Assange is their top priority. So what are they doing, being understaffed? Well, you could hire more people, but we don't do that in America. Our government doesn't hire more people. We privatize everything. Like Snowden, when he revealed those NSA secrets, he wasn't working for the NSA, right? He was an independent contractor. And the Justice Department is privatizing some of the work to prosecute the insurrection. They just gave a big contract to Deloitte Financial Advisory Services for help in managing the database to store all the evidence that will be used against the subhumans, the white nationalists who stormed the Capitol. They've asked Deloitte Financial Advisory Services to manage the database for our Justice Department. There are miles and miles of video from body cams and cell phones from January 6, flash drives, photographs, radio transmissions. This was the most televised crime in American history. More and more evidence is pouring in, and it's getting harder to prosecute because in our system, the Justice Department has to allow for discovery. All the evidence has to be made available to the people, the defense attorneys. This is a big task. And yet they have time to go after Julian Assange, who I don't remember threatening to kill Nancy Pelosi or hang Mike Pence. I know that Hillary Clinton threatened to kill Julian Assange. I remember Hillary Clinton said she'd like to order an airstrike to kill Julian Assange. And then she said she was joking. So we're understaffed. And instead of saving money, so the Justice Department saving money, which we don't seem to have, the cheapest thing to do would be for the Justice Department to hire more lawyers and to hire people to manage their database. That's the most efficient use of tax dollars. But instead, we're giving a no-bid contract to Deloitte to do it, which means it's going to be more expensive and hacked because Deloitte has a history of their databases getting hacked. So, you know, instead of bringing Julian Assange to America to prosecute him, why don't we have him manage the database instead of Deloitte. I'm pretty sure Julian Assange knows more about hacking and how to prevent it than any of these frauds, these charlatans who work for Deloitte. I guarantee you, the people they just hired from Deloitte, they don't even know how to compress video. These are kids with MBAs. Deloitte is a financial service company, and they are managing evidence now for the Justice Department. They've literally financialized our Justice Department now. We're having a financial service company helping the Justice Department, which is, we're going to get screwed. They're going to pad the bills. That's what Deloitte does. They're managing the evidence. Deloitte shouldn't be working for the Justice Department. Deloitte should be prosecuted by the Justice Department. More importantly, you're worried about espionage? You're bringing Julian Assange here to America to charge him with violating the 1917 Espionage Act? Well, guess what? Deloitte is not an American company. Deloitte is a British company, and they have employees all over the world who have no loyalty to America or Britain, for that matter. That's why they keep getting hacked. So you're going to prosecute Julian Assange for espionage, but we turn over our Justice Department's database to a foreign corporation. Not just the Justice Department. Deloitte also has a no-bid contract to manage the databases for the Centers for Disease Control. And they keep getting hacked. Deloitte has a long history of getting their databases hacked. I'm telling you, you don't want to get hacked? Cancel the no-bid contract with Deloitte. Hire Julian Assange, Merrick Garland. You won't get hacked. And Deloitte is going to spy on the Justice Department the same way Snowden didn't work for the NSA. He was a subcontractor. That's why Snowden was able to leak NSA documents. Deloitte doesn't just manage databases for the Justice Department and the CDC. It does international consulting. It's kind of like McKinsey, Pete Buttigieg's old company, that advised Purdue Pharma on how to sell more opiates to doctors and get more and more Americans addicted to opiates. Deloitte is an international consultant, and there's no chance that someone from Deloitte would hack the Justice Department files to see, I don't know, what litigation is pending in their antitrust unit or their Wall Street crime unit or the Southern District of Manhattan. There's no chance that anybody at Deloitte would hack the Justice Department's files to see what litigation might be pending and then use that information from that hack to advise foreign clients accordingly. They wouldn't go give that information to a hedge fund manager so he could trade accordingly. No, it's not like an international corporation that has no national boundaries, that has no loyalty to any government. It's not like Deloitte would try to act on inside information. But let's prosecute Julian Assange for exposing secrets we already knew, for exposing crimes committed in our name. Let's prosecute Julian Assange for showing us the video of kids in a helicopter in Iraq laughing as they murdered an innocent, I believe it was a reporter. I think it was a foreign reporter, and then laughing. Something like, this guy's going to have a bad day, and then he's dust. So Julian Assange has been in Belmarsh prison since 2019. And his partner, Stella Morris, said yesterday that before the British court sends Assange to America, the British court should take Julian Assange's safety as well as his family's safety into consideration. She said, and I quote, this is Stella Morris, his partner, quote, "What has not been discussed today is why I fear for my safety and the safety of our children and Julian's life." She went on to say the constant threats and intimidation that we have endured for years, which has been terrorizing us, that has been terrorizing Julian for over 10 years. So let's all talk about the crime rate that's not actually going up, but let's talk about how dangerous it is for ordinary Americans and not talk about how dangerous it really is for our whistleblowers like Reality Winner, who is now under house arrest. She's serving 5.5 years for leaking, for giving The Intercept NSA documents, 5.5 years she spent in prison where she was sexually assaulted and contracted COVID. That's America, the richest country in the world. Well, more bad news for the MyPillow guy and Rudy Giuliani. By the way, we're going to be talking about infrastructure. I'm putting that off because we have Professor Ben Burgess, who wrote a piece in Jacobin about the infrastructure bills. And then we have Mark Savasco, Congressman Ted Lieu's chief of staff, coming up. So we're going to talk about these two infrastructure bills. What is in it? We're going to go over what is in it and what is not in it. We're going to talk about what Pelosi may actually be trying to achieve here. It's kind of interesting because the Senate passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It's about what, $1 trillion, three. Not enough goodies in it, and some bad things are actually in it as well. We'll go over that. And Nancy Pelosi, no fan of her. I believe her husband Paul should be arrested and for insider trading. However, she is, for the time being, caving to the Progressive Caucus, which is saying we will not pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill until we first pass Bernie's $3.5 trillion budget bill, which is an infrastructure bill, through reconciliation. This can pass. The Democrats they do not need the Republicans on this. It can pass because it's a budget bill. The rules state that it can pass with a simple majority, which the Democrats have in the Senate. So it can pass through what is called reconciliation. Well, there are about 100 members of the Progressive Caucus in the Democratic parties in the House who are saying to Nancy Pelosi, we're not going to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill until you first bring Bernie's bill to the floor. We want to make sure that gets passed first. You're not going to be Lucy, and you're not going to take the football away from us. Nancy Pelosi seems to be caving into the demands of the progressives, the Progressive Caucus in the House, which might explain why the squad has been silent. I mean, I've never understood why the people from Force the Vote are so fixated on the squad forcing the vote when the Progressive Caucus is made up of the squad and other progressives in the House, like Ted Lieu. I don't understand the obsession with the squad, why you expect people of color who are already marginalized in the Democratic Party, in the House, why you would expect these fresh women, these new Congress people to wield all this power when the squad is just this thing that is just a name. You have the Progressive Caucus, which is a real thing. And the Progressive Caucus, Katie Porter, is in the Progressive Caucus. I don't know what this obsession is with the squad. It's the Progressive Caucus that's going to move the mountains in the House. For the time being, they seem to be threatening Nancy Pelosi, not the squad, the Progressive Caucus. This was something I said back in January. I'm for forcing the vote. I think you should vote on Medicare for all every day, the same way the Republicans voted every day to repeal Obamacare, and let everybody go on record. And even if they know that they can vote for Medicare for all because it will never pass, let them vote for it. So let's get them all on record saying that they're for Medicare for all. Every day we should be forcing the vote, but not the squad. It's the Progressive Caucus. That's where the power is. So we'll discuss this with Mark Savasco. There's something dishonest about blaming the squad. I don't understand it. I don't understand the fixation on AOC. I don't understand Susan Sarandon complaining about AOC. It's the Progressive Caucus. The squad is just like a drinking group. You know, it's not a caucus. I don't understand it. Maybe I'm wrong. I have no. There's too much information coming at me. I can't keep up. Well, more bad. I promise you, by the end of this show, you will understand both infrastructure bills and why we may not see any infrastructure bill ending up on Joe Biden's desk until October. This thing is not over by a long shot, because I think the Progressive Caucus is going to make life difficult for Schumer and Biden, because I think the Progressive Caucus is listening, and they know that we're going to make life difficult for the Progressive Caucus if there aren't enough goodies in Bernie's infrastructure bill. And I have faith in Bernie. Another thing I don't understand is why people are turning on Bernie. He's the only good thing we have in the Senate, and people are saying he has no spine. He's turned his back on the left. If Bernie doesn't pass your purity test, I think you might be dishonest. I think there's something dishonest. Bernie is the greatest politician since Eugene Debs. He's a miracle of democracy. If Bernie doesn't pass your purity test, I think there's something dishonest. I think you're the type of person who thinks the Boogaloo Boys can be negotiated with. I think you're that kind of person. I think if you think Bernie lost his spine and is nothing, then you're the type of person who will break bread with the Boogaloo Boys because they tell you they're for Black Lives Matter. And you go, oh, okay, he told me he's not a racist. Anyway, more bad news for the MyPillow guy and Rudy Giuliani. U.S. District Court Judge Carl Nichols is presiding over Dominion Voting's lawsuit against former prosecutor Sidney Powell. She's a former prosecutor. And former prosecutor Rudy Giuliani. You still want to trust the police and the DA? Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani make common cause with the MyPillow guy, okay? You want to get arrested and have your life in the hands of people who do business with the MyPillow guy? Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and the MyPillow guy are being sued by Dominion Voting for their false claims about Dominion voting machines. These claims led to the insurrection on January 6th, and those claims are still being made. Lawyers for Rudy Giuliani, who aren't being paid, lawyers for Powell, Sidney Powell, and the lawyers for the MyPillow guy told the judge that their clients have a First Amendment right to make false claims if it's a political debate. Isn't that interesting? Giuliani pretty much said, yeah, we're throwing some fake hip checks here, but it's politics. Well, Judge Nichols is overseeing this civil suit. He issued a 40-page ruling saying the lawsuit will continue. The judge insisted there's no such thing as blanket immunity for political speech. This is very interesting because when it comes to politics, people lie all the time. Of course, Dominion is a corporation. You're lying about a corporation. So your speech is not as protected as it would be lying about Joe Biden. It's one thing to lie about Joe Biden. It's another thing to lie about a corporation. So the My Pillow guy was hosting another one of his bullshit symposiums about voter fraud in Sioux Falls. And I want to show you, I want to play you the clip. Here he is. This is real. This is actual footage. Oh, I hope we have it, of the My Pillow guy conducting his symposium about voter fraud. And then somebody held up a sign telling him that the trial is going to continue. I think he's being sued for $1 billion. The crack addict, Mike Lindell, the gambling addict, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. This is the My Pillow guy learning that the $1 billion defamation suit filed against him shall continue. Is it there it is. Is it playing? Yes, it is. There it is. He sees the sign and he's, oh my God. My lawyers assured me that the judge was going to rule in our favor. He just storms right out and a little terrified. Yes, there are lawyers who will assure you of anything and just keep racking up bills. Kind of like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. That's what they do for a living now. They just rack up legal fees. And that's what's happening to Mike Lindell, the genius, the My Pillow genius, who was assured by his lawyers that we've appealed to Judge Nichols, and this case, we've stopped this case from going through. I love the way he just stormed off in the middle of his bullshit symposium. This is interesting because it's the difference between political speech and regular defamation. Judge Nichols wrote that while it's true courts recognize the value in some level of imaginative expression, or rhetorical hyperbole in our public debate, the judge says, yes, we allow for imaginative expression or rhetorical hyperbole in our public debate. The judge writes, but it is simply not the law that provably false statements cannot be actionable if made in the context of an election. This is interesting. This is really interesting because, as far as I know, you can lie, and this is the problem here in America, you can lie about your opponents. You can pretty much say anything. It's protected by the First Amendment. But he's saying that rhetorical hyperbole and imaginative expression, if it bleeds into false statements that are provably false, then it could be actionable, even if it takes place during an election. The judge goes on to write that an example of unprotected speech that the First Amendment does not protect, would be Sidney Powell claiming that the founder of Dominion once bragged that he could change the outcome of an election with the flip of a switch. Sidney Powell claims that she has a tape of the founder of Dominion bragging that he could change the outcome of any election he wants just by flipping a switch. And the judge said she either has the tape or she doesn't. This is provably true or provably false. We can prove whether or not the founder of Dominion once bragged that he could change the outcome of an election with the flip of a switch. This is going to be an interesting trial. And of course, Dominion is a corporation. So those statements do something that just doesn't damage a politician. We don't care about our political leaders, but we do care about the reputations of our corporations. And this is why this case is going to be interesting. I have a feeling the courts are going to be way more protective of Dominion than they would be the Biden family. Judge Nichols writes, these statements are either true or not. Either Powell has a video, Sidney Powell has a video depicting the founder of Dominion saying he can change 1 million votes, or she does not. Nichols went on to say, there is no rule that a defendant cannot act in reckless disregard of the truth when relying on sworn affidavits. This is going to be Rudy's problem, because Rudy, when there were like 60 cases that he tried in the run up to the January 6th insurrection. He bungled every lawsuit. He lost every lawsuit. And he's on record telling the judges that, well, yeah, we're not charging voter fraud. We're just saying, he literally says, we're just saying stuff, but I have affidavits. Rudy is big on the affidavits. He dropped the affidavits on Trump's desk and said, we can prove voter fraud. And so this is what Judge Nichols wrote. There is no rule that a defendant cannot act in reckless disregard of the truth when relying on sworn affidavits, especially sworn affidavits that the defendant had a role in creating. It would be nice if Judge Nichols could write clearly and not use double negatives. Basically, what the judge is saying, those affidavits are fugazis because you prepared them. You had a reckless disregard of the truth when you prepared those affidavits. The judge wrote, and Dominion alleges that Powell's evidence and Giuliani's evidence was either falsified by Powell and Giuliani, misrepresented and cherry-picked, or so obviously unreliable that the defendants had to have known those affidavits were false. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting trial. Rudy Giuliani is facing a lot of time in prison, and his legal bills are piling up. Donald Trump raised $100 million in the last quarter, biggest fundraiser in the Republican Party right now. If you think Trump is going away, he's not. He's got $100 million to keep for himself, but he can threaten to spend it on any candidate he wants. He won't, because he needs the money, but he's got $100 million just from the last quarter. And Rudy Giuliani is asking him to pay his legal fees, and Trump is refusing. There are reports that Trump is disgusted by Rudy Giuliani, and he feels betrayed by Rudy Giuliani because Rudy's asking him for money, and that's a betrayal. This is true. This is what Trump has told his friends. Rudy promised to work for free. So now Trump feels betrayed that Rudy is coming to him for money. Yes, the genius Rudy Giuliani promised Trump that he would defend him for free because he said, I can use the exposure. You know, it's part of Rudy's branding. You know, if I can associate myself with the president of the United States, other mobsters around the world will come running to me with business. And that hasn't happened. And he can't pay his legal fees. And he's pretty much told friends that he expects to go to prison. And he set up a GoFundMe, not a GoFundMe page. Well, it is a GoFundMe page, a GoFundMe page, which is a GoFundMe page. Nobody is donating. He needs millions of dollars to pay his legal fees. I always love when a lawyer can't pay his legal fees. Sorry. So his GoFundMe page had to be taken down. Who would give money to Rudy Giuliani? So he's resorted to this. This is what Rudy Giuliani, he is smart. I think this is going to work.
Hi, it's Rudy Giuliani, and I'm on Cameo. If there's an issue of concern that you want to discuss, or a story you'd like to hear or share with me, or a greeting that I can bring to someone that would bring happiness to their day, I would be delighted to do it. It can be arranged, and we can talk through the magic of Cameo. Thank you.
I was talking to Smigel about this. I don't have $350. And if I did, I wouldn't give it to Rudy Giuliani. But it would be interesting. I know that there are other people who are going to do this to see what he'd be willing to say for $350. I can only get it hard for my cousin. He married his cousin. There are many things I would. I don't have $350, but if you have $350, give it to St. Jude's. It's already settled law that Rudy Giuliani will say anything. Mike Rowe is coming up. Let me get to one more story, and then I hope Mike Rowe is coming up. Here's a dirty, dark secret that will destroy the Republican Party if this ever gets out. This is something that will destroy the Republican Party once and for all. Nobody would ever vote for a Republican again if the media ever reported what's coming out of the Census Department. It turns out, think of the border and this so-called crisis, right? Remember, this is Jim Jordan talking about masks and vaccine mandates. This is what he said on Sean Hannity.
Yeah, Sean, I don't want to hear anything about COVID cases in Florida, mask mandates in New York, vaccine passports. I don't want to hear anything about that until the Biden administration deals with the crisis they created on our southern border. There is no other conclusion any rational person can reach other than this is intentional. This is deliberate. They are deliberately trying to harm our country.
Yeah, any rational person like Jim Jordan, that the Biden administration is creating a crisis at the border, and forget the fact that the ER rooms in Florida right now, because of Ron DeSantis, are understaffed, overflowing. DeSantis has asked the federal government, the evil federal government, for ventilators. People in Florida are being told, don't call 911 unless it's more than an emergency, okay? And DeSantis and Jim Jordan are saying, no, the problem is the border, okay? Well, here is something that would really destroy the Republican Party once and for all if anybody in the media did some reporting. We're running short on people. Now, you know how the Republicans, I love the way we don't connect dots. The Republicans can't wait to tell us that small businesses are unable to find workers. And they say that's because of that extra $300 a week Americans are getting in unemployment insurance, right? We have to get rid of that extra $300 a week, starve the American people out of their homes, get them to take these shitty jobs at starvation wages. That's what the Republicans say, because they want to they don't want Americans getting an extra $300 a week. That workforce is never coming back. You get rid of the $300 a week, that workforce is never coming back because we don't have enough people living here in America. Nobody's telling you that. The Census Department is telling you that. I've been telling you that. We don't have enough people here in America. I know it doesn't feel that way. I hate my neighbors, and I've never even met them. I hate everybody. It feels like there are too many people in America. We don't have enough people here. Trump closed the borders. People are being deported. And guess what? Nobody wants to come to this shithole country anymore. More Mexicans, this has been going on for close to a decade, more Mexicans are going back to Mexico than trying to get here. This is not a crisis at the border. It's an opportunity. We need people who are stupid enough to come here thinking this is the land of opportunity. And the people at the border, at that where they want to build that wall, let them in. We need them. The Americans are not going to work for starvation wages. And corporate America knows that. So the GOP is screwed. Yes, you can get voters to hate brown people at the border, and you can get people to vote based on cruelty and sadism. But corporate America needs those brown people at the border. That's why the price of food is going up. We need people in our slaughterhouses killing chickens and cattle so McDonald's and Tyson can kill us. We need more people. The economy can't grow without more people. Our tax base dwindles without more people. We need more people paying into Medicare and Social Security. Otherwise, this Ponzi scheme called capitalism comes crashing down because it's all about growth. And yes, climate change is exacerbated by population growth. So yes, a smaller population is a good thing for the planet, not for the first world where population is on the decline. Populations are declining in Europe. That's why Germany took in all the Syrian refugees. Merkel was smart enough to recognize they had a demographic problem. And if they don't get more people into their country, they can't prop up their safety net. And in America, we have a population implosion. For some reason, I don't know why, more and more young people are putting off having children. I don't know why. It seems like this is a perfect time to bring children into the world. It's not like you're being crushed by student loans or the planet only has 10 more years to live. The Census Department is out with some new studies, and they are devastating for the GOP in terms of what the truth is. In the past 10 years, America has experienced the slowest population growth in 80 years. In the past 10 years, America is experiencing the slowest population growth in 80 years. Fertility rates are partly to blame. But what's really to blame is nobody wants to come here anymore. And it's going to get worse for the Republicans. The Census Department is now reporting that America is experiencing unprecedented multiracial population growth, and the white population has declined for the first time in American history. You will be replaced. You're being replaced. According to the U.S. Census officials who released data on Thursday, the racial and ethnic makeup of America has changed. We are no longer a white country. Nicholas Jones is director of race, ethnicity research, and outreach for the Census Bureau's Population Division. Nicholas Jones says, quote, "These changes reveal that the U.S. population is much more multiracial and more racially and ethnically diverse than what we have ever measured in the past," which means the only solution for the GOP, they're not stupid. The people who run the GOP are not stupid. The people who vote, another story. They're not stupid, they're ignorant. The only solution for the GOP is voter suppression. That's it. That's it. They cannot win unless they suppress the vote and scapegoat the people at the border. They have to scapegoat the people at the border and blame them for their mistakes, because the Republicans are fascists, and fascists are notoriously incompetent. They take shortcuts, and the Republicans shit the bed on COVID. And who do they blame? You can't blame yourself, so you blame China, the Wuhan lab leak theory. And now they're blaming COVID. I'm not making this up. They're blaming COVID on the people at the border. Ron DeSantis, the governor of California, not the governor of California, Florida. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is blaming the surge of COVID deaths in Florida on immigrants at the border. And of course, here's Jim Jordan, who Nancy Pelosi rightfully would not allow on the Capitol riot select committee. This is what Jim Jordan says about the crisis in Florida and Texas with COVID.
Yeah, Sean, I don't want to hear anything about COVID cases in Florida, mask mandates in New York, vaccine passports. I don't want to hear anything about that until the Biden administration deals with the crisis they created on our southern border. There is no other conclusion any rational person can reach other than this is intentional. This is deliberate. They are deliberately trying to harm our
country. That's it. Unbelievable. It would be great if somebody told Jim Jordan that we need those people at the border to come into America. We need those people. The Chamber of Commerce, which loves the GOP, they know they need those people. Well, they don't. The Chamber of Commerce is also stupid. They're asking Congress and the White House to double the number of visas for what are called high-skilled temporary workers. This is the H-1B program. But we need to redefine what high-skilled worker means. What the Chamber of Commerce considers to be a high-skill worker is bullshit. It's somebody who can code. We need people who can fix things, build things, and grow things. But in America, that's not high-skilled. That's not the H-1B program. We need people with real skills, people who can build, repair, and grow. And you know who has those skills? Everyone waiting at the border to get in here.